House of the Dragon Season 3 is officially filming as of this week, and Ryan Condal, showrunner for House of the Dragon, sat down with Entertainment Weekly to share some Season 3 House of the Dragon news. So that's what I want to go over this video. Let's start with the budget. For those that complain about not seeing as much as possible, or perhaps the CGI not hitting the mark, Ryan Condal has clarified why. He said, "There's been no television show in history that ever said, 'We have too much money and too much time to make this.' You're always making decisions as you go along as to how are we going to use the resources we have right now to tell the best story we possibly can tell. But I appreciate everybody's patience." I really love the end of his thing. I appreciate everyone's patience. It's basically his way of saying, we're doing the best we can with the budget we have, so can you lay off me? Thanks. Now, under Zaslav, the terrible new CEO of Warner Media, oh my gosh, I'm sure it's become even more difficult since Season 1 for Ryan to work with the budget and the episodes that they're allowed to have. Despite the budgetary issues, Ryan Condal has spoken out that it's going to be the biggest season of House of the Dragon ever, sharing, "It's our biggest season to date, both in terms of ambition and just the practical size, the amount of sets. We're coming down to, if not the end game, the midpoint and getting into late Act 2 and moving into the start of Act 3. Anybody that's read the book knows that the narrative gets bigger and grimmer as it goes along, and the show has to match that ambition as best as it possibly can. I will say that the war this season goes very hot, very, very quickly. I think the people that were waiting and waiting for all the horrible, brutal, pitiless bloodshed will be getting it in copious amounts." Seeing on how we ended Season 2 with the conversion of all the ships, the battleships, we can probably count on it being one of the biggest and bloodiest battles in Season 3, the Battle of the Gullet, so much that we will see changes in people's sides. But of course we also know there's going to be a lot more battles in Season 3. Ryan did admit that every change we don't like is because of him, and to blame him, stating, "There's nothing we do on the show without talking it through and thinking about it very deeply for usually many months, if not years. I will just say the creative decisions that we make in the show all flow through me, every single one of them, and this is the show that I want to make and believe, as a fan of Fire and Blood and a deep reader of this material, it is the adaptation that we should be making to not only serve Fire and Blood, but also a massive television audience." Which is probably a defense against criticism from everyone. More importantly, George R. R. Martin, I think we all remember his Not a Blog post where he absolutely went crazy on House of the Dragon. And Ryan Condal finally broke his silence on George R. R. Martin's Not a Blog post. He said, and this is very long, I'm sorry, "It was disappointing. I will simply say I've been a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire for almost 25 years now, and working on the show has been truly one of the greatest privileges of not only my career as a writer, but my life as a fan of science fiction and fantasy. George himself is a monument, a literal icon in addition to a personal hero of mine, and was heavily influential on me coming up as a writer. It's this incomplete history, and it requires a lot of joining of the dots and a lot of invention, and as you go along the way, I will simply say I made every effort to include George in the adaptation process. I really did, over years and years, and we really enjoyed a mutual, fruitful, I thought, real strong collaboration for a long time. But at some point, as we got deeper down the road, he just became unwilling to acknowledge the practical issues at hand in a reasonable way. And I think as a showrunner, I have to keep my practical producer hat on and not my creative writer, lover of the material hat on at the same time. At the end of the day, I just have to keep marching not only the writing process forward, but also the practical parts of the process forward for the sake of the crew, the cast, and for HBO, because that's my job. So I can only hope that George and I can rediscover that harmony someday, but that's what I have to say about it." It's so interesting that he claims he kept George up to date on everything when George clearly said Ryan lied to him about certain details, like Maelor, the youngest child of Aegon and Helena, being in the series. It also takes away the narrative that the show is what really happened versus the books written by the Maesters. The Maesters wouldn't have gotten the number of Aegon II's children wrong, nor the giant age between Alicent and Rhaenyra wrong. It's also weird for him to criticize George about production when George has been working on shows and writing scripts long before Ryan ever had a career. So if anyone knows about budgetary things and how to get around that, it's George. So it really seems like he's trying to pass the blame as George just not understanding, and we all know that's just completely not true. George's long career holds evidence against what he's saying. Anyways, let's talk about the Gullet, because next Ryan spoke on it, saying, "In many ways, the Gullet has been on the minds
of the production for about 3 years now and trying to figure out how we're going to mount it in a way that was both producible and exciting, thrilling. The planning that has gone into this, basically all departments working to really make a thing that nobody has ever done before. But yeah, it's a stunning thing. I would like to think that this is probably the most complex sequence that has ever been done for television. Not necessarily the most expensive or the longest shoot or anything like that, but just based on the number of moving pieces, the amount of different disciplines, media that have gone to be blended together to achieve success, because you're talking about sea and ships and dragons and action. Now the 3-year mark is because originally the Battle of the Gullet was going to be in season 2, but due to Zaslav cutting episodes and redoing budgets, they had to save the Battle of the Gullet for season 3, which is why probably the pacing of season 2 seemed a bit weird to a lot of people. There's a reason it was written to go a little bit further. And 3 years is a long time to be working on a battle, and while I believe it's going to be epic, I worry they're building it up too much if it does fall short. You know what they say, under promise, over deliver. But the Battle of Gullet is only one of 4 major events we're being promised for season 3, so go ahead and guess what the others are. I know people can probably guess what another big event is going to be in season 3, but I'm not going to spoil it. Lastly, we have casting for 2 more characters, both Northerners. First, Tommy Flanagan is playing Sir Roderick Dustin, known as Rudy the Ruin. He leads an army of 2,000 Northmen called the Winter Wolves due to their age. If you remember, it's tradition in the north during a bad winter for the elderly men to walk out into the snow to die, so there's more supplies for the younger generations. These men are at the end of their lives, but that doesn't mean they aren't incredibly fierce. But that's why they're called the Winter Wolves. Next, Dan Fogler will play Sir Torrin Manderly, which I believe I have already released a short on that character for season 3. But Ryan claims that Roddy the Ruin is a favorite of his and a true fan favorite, and he is very, very proud of what he's written for that role. He believes that it's going to bring a lot of northern spirit into a mostly southern or southron based story.